What happens in those moments between life and death? It's a question we've been asking ourselves forever. And I'm not talking about myths or legends here. We're looking at a real, documented phenomenon that really pushes the limits of what we know about consciousness. Today, we are diving deep into the mystery of near-death experiences.
So yeah, this is the big question, right? What is actually going on in our heads when the body is shutting down only to be yanked back by modern medicine? You'd think it would just be a jumble of chaotic, fuzzy memories. But the stories people tell are, well, they're surprisingly clear, consistent, and way more common than you might think.
And just take a look at this. This isn't some super rare fringe event. Out of all the people who survive something as intense as a cardiac arrest, a pretty big chunk, we're talking up to 1 in 5, comes back with an absolutely incredible story to tell. A story of a near-death experience.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's get on the same page. We need to define what we're actually talking about. What exactly is a near-death experience, according to the folks who actually study them?
So, here's the official take. It's a profound, deeply personal event. This isn't just a fuzzy memory. It's a structured, often vivid experience. And these reports are coming from people who were either right on the edge of death or, in a lot of cases, were actually clinically dead. No heartbeat, no breathing, before being brought back to life.
All right, and this is where it gets truly fascinating. Because it doesn't matter what your culture is, what your religion is, or your background, people from all over the world report startlingly similar things. It's almost like there's a common blueprint for this experience.
Here you can see the core components that just keep popping up again and again. Things like floating outside your body, this incredible feeling of peace, moving through a tunnel toward a light, and even seeing your entire life flash before your eyes. Let's break a few of these down. First up, the out-of-body experience, or OBE. This is where people describe this sensation of their consciousness just floating free. They often say they're looking down on their own physical body and all the chaos of the resuscitation efforts happening around them. It's like they're a completely detached observer. And then you've got that iconic imagery, the stuff we all know from movies and TV shows, this feeling of moving through a dark space, like a tunnel, straight towards this brilliant, overwhelmingly loving light. People who experience this often say the light feels like a presence, and sometimes they even meet loved ones who have already passed away. And finally, there's the life review. It's not some kind of judgment, but more like a panoramic 3D instantaneous replay of every single moment of your life. And what's so wild is that people report experiencing all of this with a level of mental clarity and alertness that feels even more real than everyday life. Okay, but of course, science has to ask the tough question. Is all of this just a grand finale produced by a dying brain? Let's dive into the leading physiological explanations for what could be going on at a neurobiological level. So a common theory you'll hear is cerebral anoxia. Basically, a lack of oxygen going to the brain. But there's a huge problem with this idea. Normally, when someone's brain is deprived of oxygen, they get confused, agitated, and scared. Well, that's the exact opposite of the calm, peaceful, and super alert state that people consistently report in NDEs. It just doesn't line up. Now, a theory that holds a bit more water is the neurotransmitter surge. The basic idea is that when your body is under that kind of extreme stress, the brain just unleashes a massive flood of chemicals like serotonin. And a chemical cocktail like that could absolutely create a powerful, dreamlike state full of euphoria and incredible visions. And there are other biological theories floating around too. Some research points to a final, massive surge of high-frequency brain waves called gamma waves, which are tied to conscious perception. Other studies have shown that if you electrically stimulate certain parts of the brain, like the temporal lobes, you can actually trigger things like out-of-body sensations and life flashbacks. Or maybe it's just the brain's last desperate attempts to make sense of scrambled signals as it shuts down. So here's the deal. While all those physiological models explain a lot, they don't explain everything. So let's pivot now to the stuff that these brain-based models really, really struggle with. And this gets to the very heart of the whole debate. Because some of the evidence coming out of NDEs is incredibly difficult to explain if you believe it's only the physical brain at work. This brings us to this mind-blowing concept called veridical perceptions. This is when someone having an NDE reports seeing or hearing specific, real-world events that are later confirmed to be true. And we're talking about things they could not possibly have seen or heard with their normal senses, like accurately describing a unique surgical tool being used on them, or repeating conversations that happen in a waiting room 3 doors down the hall.
And this is the ultimate challenge to the it's all in the brain model. How can a person have a clear, structured, complex conscious experience at a time when their brain shows zero measurable activity, a flatlined EEG? It really pushes us to consider the possibility that the mind, or our consciousness, might be able to operate independently of the brain. But look, regardless of what causes an NDE, whether it's biology or something else, one thing is absolutely undeniable. The experience fundamentally changes the people who have them. So let's look at the real-world impact. The after effects are just profound, and they are so consistent across the board. People almost universally lose their fear of death completely. Their values do a total 180, shifting away from things like money and status and toward compassion, spirituality, and a much deeper sense of connection to other people.
This quote really just captures the heart of that transformation. For so many of these people, the experience is a complete reboot of their purpose in life. The focus isn't about what you can get anymore, it's about what you can give. So, we're left with this enormous question. Is this profound, life-altering experience just the final, beautiful, elaborate light show of a brain shutting down? Or is it possible that for just a brief moment, these people are getting a glimpse through a window into something else entirely? The research is ongoing, but for now, the mystery remains.